Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Thank you for joining today. We're just going to give everyone a minute or two to hop in and would love to hear in the meantime where everyone is zooming in from today. Me, Kelly, and Justin are all based out of Seattle, and would love to see where everyone else is from. We have a really exciting topic, especially for our sales folks. Ooh, Virginia. Fun. And also make sure to stay till the end because we are giving away a year free of Read. So we will send that to the winner in the chat at the end as well. Oh, wow. Wow. I love seeing where everyone's zooming in from. It's so exciting. Usually I say I hope that it's nicer where you're at than where we're at, but surprisingly in Seattle, it's sunny today. So San Diego, I bet they still have us beat on weather. Awesome. Well, while we give everyone another second to join, I'll introduce myself real quick. My name's Megan. I'm on the sales team here at Read, and I'm really, really excited about our webinar today. And I have two awesome guests that will be joining and running, and that is our new VP of Sales, Kelly Brooks, and our VP of Product, Justin Farris. So really excited. They're going to have a great conversation for you all today. We'll have a Q&A at the end, so feel free to send any questions in the chat throughout the webinar. But without further ado, I'll pass it over to you, Kelly.
Awesome. Thank you for the intro, Megan, and hello, everyone. So, as Megan mentioned, I just recently joined Read in February as head of sales. And one of the reasons I joined Read was actually how much value I saw using the tool for my own workflows as a sales leader. So, I think we have a lot of sellers and sales leaders on the call today. If you're like me, you wake up every day thinking, how can I build and progress more pipeline? I'm thinking about win rate. I'm thinking about deal velocity. I'm thinking about hiring and ramping and upskilling my reps. How can I get my reps in front of more customers, reducing the admin load? And then how can I also scale myself as the business grows and sort of think about this like fly high, fly low, understanding what's happening across the team where I can't be everywhere at once. So those were all use cases that really attracted me to Read. I think a lot of you have probably had at least some experience with the tool. And so you're familiar with the out of the box functionality that we have. So thinking about how can I quickly prepare for the next call that I have by looking back on what we've covered maybe in our last conversation, doing some research on this persona, maybe this industry. Read's bread and butter is, of course, actually recording those calls, getting your meeting transcriptions, not just what was said, but also how was it said and what are the points of inflection in the call in terms of sentiment and engagement. And then how do we take all of that to provide a really targeted and timely follow-up, summarizing key takeaways, actions, maybe open questions. And then my favorite part about recording all of our customer calls with Read is how that allows us to learn, not just as an individual seller or as a sales leader, but we create this sort of repository of customer calls that the entire company has access to draw insights from, figure out how can we learn from our customers and how can we also show up better every time we get in front of them. So we're going to actually be unpacking a lot of this as a webinar series over the next couple of months. And we'll get into some of these more specific out of the box functionality or use cases. But what we really wanted to focus on today was kind of taking it further and how can you get even more out of Read by plugging into an MCP. So first, kind of taking a quick hit on what is an MCP. A analogy that you may have heard is to kind of think about MCP as a USB hub. So this is allowing you to connect all of your favorite tools like Read into whatever your model of choice is. So, a lot of us think about using like Claude or ChatGPT. So this is feeding all the context that you want into that model to allow you really to run, just about any process you could think of. I like to say with MCP, like your only limitation is really your imagination of what you can do. One of the questions that we get a lot is, when should I think about using MCP versus the native search functionality in Read? So we call this Ask Read, formerly known as Search Copilot. And the way to think about this at a high level, and then I think Justin will talk about this a bit more at the end, is Ask Read is going to be your best bet for interacting specifically with meeting reports. So if that's a specific meeting, one-off meeting, if you want to quickly search across multiple meeting reports, if you want to scan this organizational repository, Ask Read is going to be faster. It's going to have all the context that you need right at your fingertips. Where MCP really comes in is when you want to kind of take that further with more detailed analysis. You're going to see in some of the examples that Justin and I shared much more like detailed prompts that have a lot of instructions. They're calling upon multiple sources. Maybe what you're producing is a more interactive asset, or you want specific visual standards. And then as you start thinking about building more complex workflows and automated business processes, this is where you're really going to see a lot of value out of MCP. So what I wanted to do is walk through a couple of examples of how I'm using this today. And then I'm going to pass over to Justin, our head of product, and he's going to do more of a live demo on how you can get started yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and come out of my presentation mode here so I can toggle. Hopefully we can still see that. Perfect. So I've created a couple of use cases kind of in order of least to more complex to give you a flavor. Justin likes to tease me for being one of the top consumers of Claude tokens at Read. And that's because I just think this is so freaking cool. I started this. I'm not a super technical person, but what I love about using these tools is that you kind of just have to know enough to start, and then let the tools really guide you through how to kind of step by step get to the endpoint that you want to be. So the first one is I'm calling an opportunity summary. If you're a seller or a sales leader on the call, you know that we would love to be talking to the decision maker in every interaction. You also know that that's not always how it shakes out. So sometimes we're selling through a champion. More and more, we're actually selling through decision committees. And so you're thinking about, how do we bring people along in this evaluation, even if they're not involved in every touch point? So this opportunity summary you can kind of think about as a little more advanced version of a deal follow-up. Where I originally created this was for a champion who wanted an asset to take to their VP to kind of build enrollment for getting involved in the evaluation. And so you can kind of see my like starting prompt here. I said, scan all of our relevant history that we've had together, give us a overview of the problems that they've surfaced, really using their language, and articulate how Read can provide specific value. So here's a version of what this came back with. This has been scrubbed of all of the actual customer information, but you can kind of get an understanding of an exec level summary. These are the customer's actual words of some of the problem statements that they wanted to focus on, and then really mapping to the specific ways that we had talked about Read helping. So the idea is, again, an asset that this person can kind of circulate internally, build some enrollment for getting involved in the next steps of the evaluation. The next use case to walk through here is positioning matrix. So we're doing a bunch of hiring at Read and scaling out our sales team, which is really exciting. And so what I wanted to do was create a guide that could help our new reps understand who some of our top personas are, what are their pain points, and what are the ways to kind of think about responding to those pain points. The really cool thing about this is that it was built using actual customer language. language. So that's the real value here of having the Read MCP plugged into Claude, rather than just kind of doing this from scratch, is that all of this is inspired by real language that our customers have told us on sales calls, as well as the outcomes. So we know if we respond certain ways that that yields to different outcomes, and that's been built into the playbook. So here's what this looks like. And again, this kind of speaks again to where you might want to create a more interactive asset. This has a few of our top personas. It gives our reps an understanding of their day-to-day challenges, what they're looking for, specific messaging that maps to maybe what they're doing today, the problem that they're trying to solve, and then what they're trying to achieve. It has built out discovery questions that are first, second layer, battle cards, objection handling, and again, all inspired by persona specific language. And then the final use case that I'll walk through here is the most advanced. You can see that there's a lot of text on the screen here around the prompt. The actual prompt for this is probably pages and pages long of a lot of back and forth of honing it in. But if you are a seller or a sales leader, you know that getting accurate and up-to-date CRM notes can be kind of a chore that falls into that administrative drag bucket. And so what I wanted to do is create an automated workflow that would scan everything happening related to the deals in our pipeline. So including the sales calls, including the email records or any like CRM status changes. And I wanted to post an automated note in a very specific format on the CRM so that the reps could see it, I could see it, my sales leaders could see it. We'd all have a really kind of like solid baseline understanding of what's been happening in a deal. And so this is what this looks like. Again, this has been kind of scrubbed, but this is basically a mock-up of how this note appears in our CRM. I have prompted it to give me an overview of the company, who the key contacts are, as well as the role that they're playing in the evaluation. And so this is an example of having like the conversational context is adding a lot more value, right, than just the CRM fields that you might have already. But this is correctly identified that Sarah, in this case, is the champion. So that's helpful for me to understand as I'm going into a deal review. It's giving me an overview of their current process, their tech stack, their key challenges, maybe any requirements that they've specifically surfaced. What's their use case for a product? And again, I've prompted this to always appear in this specific format because this is how I want to think about the deal. It's giving me a snapshot of the interactions to date. And then we are using Spiced as a sales methodology. And so this is also mapping to what information do we have so far. If we hadn't covered one of these, it would flag as such. So again, that's really helpful for me going into a deal review or maybe for the sales rep to be thinking about their next interaction. And then finally, this is my favorite part. What do we recommend that you do next? And so this has been, we're continuing to like prompt and refine this based off of our known sales best practices and the types of tactics that I want to see my sales team lead with. So it's recommending next best action. My workflow is I'm constantly scanning these as I'm inspecting our pipeline. Kind of helps me understand, where do I maybe want to dig in to a call review or a deal review. So it doesn't replace that leader-led inspection, but it helps me be a lot more efficient with my time and helps our sales leaders stay organized in their pipeline as well. So those are just a couple of the my favorite use cases for MCP. And from there, I'm going to pass over to Justin Farris, our VP of Product, and he is going to show you how you can do this for yourself.
Yeah, mute myself. There we go. Hey everyone. So I loved Kelly's analogy of the USB hub. I think that makes a ton of sense. And MCP, the industry has decided to call it many different things. So if you haven't heard of MCP, that's okay. You might have heard of connectors or apps. They're basically all the same thing. So what I want to take you through really quick is one, how to get set up. So how to use this technology along with Read to pull in your meeting data into the tools of your choice. And then I want to show you a real world example that I think is pretty cool, and you can tell me and give me feedback. But let's first start with getting set up. So if you're a ChatGPT user, and I'm just going to show you ChatGPT quickly, and then we're going to do the example in Claude. But if you're a ChatGPT user, it's called apps. That's what OpenAI has decided to call MCP in their world. And we're in their app store. So if you just look up Read AI, you'll see it. I already have it installed, so it's suggesting I start to chat with it. But just look for apps in ChatGPT and then look for Read AI and you'll be good to go. It'll ask you to authenticate, but it's pretty straightforward. Um, if you're not in ChatGPT, you might be using Claude or another tool. And that's where you need to know just one bit of information, which is this URL right here. So if you Google or use your favorite LLM to go say, hey, what's the Read AI MCP server? You'll get to this page where it'll tell you that this is the URL. So all you need to know is that it's api.read.ai/MCP. And then when you're in that tool of choice, and we're going to use Claude to show you this example today, you'll go in and create a connector. And so you'll go to your connector section in Claude. You'll click that plus button, and then you'll click add a custom connector. And when you do that, it's going to ask for that URL. You'll put that in here. You can name it Read AI or whatever you want, and then just click add. It'll ask you to authenticate, and you're off to the races. So pretty straightforward to get it set up. But let's step back now and talk about like how you might use this. So what is the USB hub here that I need to do some work for me? And so for me as the product leader at Read, I care a lot about getting signal from Kelly's team and our sales team to know what are our customers needing? Like where is Read falling short? Where do I need to think about prioritizing the product team's time to make sure that we're continuing to deliver value? This has been my problem for now probably multiple decades of my career as a product person. Is like, what do I build? Like, what is the most important thing that I should have the team focus on? And there's never been a shortage of signal. The challenge has always been, how do I distill signal from a lot of noise? How do I understand patterns and trends? Because one customer today might be really frustrated about a certain part of our product, but they might be only representing one customer out of the thousands that we have. How do I understand like what are those macro trends to really be pushing the product and the company and the team in the right direction? So here's how I do that. I have a folder that is a smart folder. So in Read, it's automatically populating every single sales call that happens at Read. So I have the sales team share with me all of those calls. And so now I know that they're in there. And if we go into Claude, I have built a Claude co-work workflow that is called product discovery feedback. And so you can see that here. If you've never used Claude Cowork before, don't worry, it's not scary. But way to think of this versus say a generic like ChatGPT chat or a Claude chat is Claude Cowork is really powerful when you want to run a repeatable workflow that has a bunch of extra data and context that might not be part of what you're putting in chat, or maybe you just don't want to have to copy and paste it into chat every single time. And then pull in, like the USB hub analogy, a bunch of different connectors and tools. So let me show you what I mean. To set this up, if you're doing it from scratch, you'll create a new project. It'll walk you through that. But I'll show you this example. And so inside of here, I actually have some files on the computer. And actually, I'm going to pull them up in a different app really quick so it's a little bit easier to see. But one of the things that matters a lot for product people is personas. A lot of different users around the world use Read. I have spent a bunch of time describing who those personas are. So is it a salesperson? Are they a pipeline owner? Is it someone who is a project manager and manages sort of the records of what's going on in their organization? Maybe they're an internal coordinator or a workflow owner. Either way, we've done a lot of thought around like, what are their problems? What do they do? What are their needs? So I want to both improve our understanding of those personas, but also leverage those personas to generate that output. So this is a document that I have that's been stored inside of Claude. And what happens here is every week this thing runs, and I'm going to show you an example of it. But it goes in and it will grab that personas document. And I understand I'm going through this fast. And then we can even maybe share this skill if you're interested, and you can reach out to us. I'd love to chat. But it'll grab that personas document you can see right here. And then what it does is it'll go and fetch read meetings. So here it is. This is our icon right here, our logo. And it's going and grabbing all those meetings I showed you earlier and basically running this job. And I'm going to pull up the skill itself here, and you can see exactly what it's doing. And this is basically just a big prompt My computer is going really slow right now. I'm so sorry. It does not like that I'm sharing at the same time as trying to demonstrate it for you. Well, let me maybe I'll explain the skill at a high level. Um, I basically gave it instructions that said, "Hey, go fetch all those meetings that I talked about. Go cross reference those meetings against these personas, and then extract a bunch of trends across all these different sales calls of product feedback, what's not working well, what feature gaps exist, where we might have the feature, but it's falling short of expectations for customers." To give me a signal of where we should prioritize. So it's basically taking all of that data and doing this deep and rich analysis around what's happening. But the problem is, I have a product team. It's not just me. And so now that's locked inside of this computer. So back to our USB hub analogy, I want to do something with that data. I want to take it and write it to a document. So at Read, we use Confluence as our primary like knowledge hub. You might use Google Drive, you might use SharePoint. It really doesn't matter. The point is, I can take a bunch of input, so read meetings, my personas document, do a bunch of work on that inside of Claude, and then push that data out. So what it does is it actually creates a Confluence page that summarizes all of this feedback. So it sounds like over the past week, there's been some customers that are a little confused about our pricing. If that's you, let me know. I'm thinking about making that a little bit more straightforward for customers. There's some CRM friction. We want to make sure that our customers can easily push content into Salesforce or HubSpot. So I'm definitely going to dig into that one. Looks like some customers in different countries and different languages outside of English are having some trouble with capture and translation. We should dig into that one. Anyway, so it's pulling all these trends. And then giving me an analysis. And then the last thing I'll show you here is it then sends, oh, my Slack disappeared. I'm not going to try and pull it up because I don't want to show you all of my Slack. But what it'll do is it'll post a note in Slack in our product channel, tag the product team with a reference to this document and give us a summary. What's magical about this, and I'll stop sharing, is that um, I used to do that kind of work all the time, where I would go and like have a bunch of conversations. I would lean on Kelly's team to give me notes from meetings. I would then write up a synopsis of it and then I would share it with the team. That's at least a 5 hour job, if not more. Now that happens automatically Monday morning, every morning at 8 a.m. And then we have something as a team to react to. I can go, it'll reference the meetings and I can go to Kelly and be like, oh my God, what happened with this customer? Let's talk about it, right? Really a superpower and something that wouldn't be possible without recapturing meetings and then having that MCP server that I can pull data from and then run that workflow. So I'll stop there and we can turn it over to Q&A. Happy to go into more details about how you might do that. And we plan to share more of these kinds of workflows publicly so our customers and users can take advantage of some of the stuff that we're learning as we adopt these tools and technologies. And yeah, just use the chat. MCP available in Copilot. Thank you for the question, Deanna. Yes, it is. Copilot Studio, I was just using it last week. I know a lot of our customers and users are Copilot folks. It definitely works, and I would recommend the way you connect that, similar to what I was showing you in Claude, is you just grab that MCP URL. There's a connector in Copilot Studio with Microsoft, and then all the stuff I described. Microsoft calls them different things. I don't think they're called skills. I think they're called something else, but by and large, the technology is very similar. Any other questions? I think one thing I'll mention, well, because Kelly made another point earlier that I think really resonated with me as I started to learn this. Technology is your imagination really is the limiting factor here. And so, what I would encourage all of you to do as you think of this is what is something you do manually right now? Fully manually. And even for me, as someone who works at an AI startup and all of that, I still have tons of stuff that I do manually. And every week I stop and think, okay, what am I doing? And can I find a way to use these tools to automate it? And it's amazing from my experience what I find where the like the thing that starts as a conversation that Reed is capturing ends up turning into something that I have to manually do every week. And so how can I like really force myself to think about that in a different way and like reorient towards like building these kinds of things and then share it with your team. So another question, um, are meetings captured if main owner are not participating in the meeting? Is there a way to set it up for all team meetings, or do those meeting owners need a read license? Um, Good question. So, to explain this in the simplest way possible, you can have Reed join a meeting as long as you're on the calendar invite. Uh, and you don't have to be in attendance of that meeting for Reed to capture that meeting. And so I leverage this a lot where I don't need to be in every meeting that my team is in. And I rarely review a meeting and read directly, like actually open the meeting report and like look through it for a meeting that I haven't attended. But oh boy, is it powerful if you're using Ask Read, as Kelly was showing earlier. And I bet, Kelly, a lot of your what you're doing is like pulling from data from sales calls that you're not even in, right? And so that by having access to those reports, that enables you to do that kind of work. So the way to set that up is in the app, you can for the meetings that are on your calendar, you can make sure that in the calendar view in the app, you can make sure Read is tagged on to join. And then the way the settings work by default, there's some workspace settings we can direct you to do some documentation here too. But just make sure everyone's an editor. And then once everyone's an editor, you can easily share that. But yeah, it works. It works just like you're describing. Uh, Trisha, is there a way to connect multiple CRMs through ReadAI to compile sales details? Um, I'd be curious, Trisha, which multiple CRMs, because that does kind of influence the answer of that question. But you certainly can push and then pull in data from Salesforce and HubSpot. Thank you, HubSpot and Client Base. Okay, so we don't have a direct integration with Client Base today. However, there are ways you can work around that. We do with HubSpot. There are ways you can work around that. Um, you can use the tools that I was showing, whether that's your Claude person or your, Deanna who's using Copilot or ChatGPT enables you to do this. Like you can take data and pull the read data along with the CRM context into these tools and like build workflows. Um, and then if there's ever like if you wanted to push data, we have APIs and there's workflow tools like Claude, or maybe you use something like Zapier as another example to then route and push data to client base. And so there's a lot of ways, and if you reach out, we're happy to give you more details on this. But there's a lot of ways you can push data in different places from Read, even if we don't have a native integration. In this case, with client base, we don't right now. Thanks for coming, Gina. We got time for one, maybe two more. Looks like we were great, Kelly, and every question was answered on everyone's mind. And yeah, congrats to Lindsay. Uh, Free year of reads, pretty good deal. Oh, we go over from Deanna. Great. I'd like to pull ReadAI data into HubSpot. Is there a feature to enable it? Yes, we have that integration. You can manually push ReadAI data into HubSpot, or which I recommend, you could turn on auto push. Auto push is the best way I would recommend any sales team or sort of go to market team to be using Read. We can direct you to the documentation, but if you just go to the integration section, um, it's on the left-hand sidebar, you will find the HubSpot option and just work through those steps. If you need, you'll need to be a HubSpot admin to turn it on the first time. And like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out to support team. They'd love to help you get set up and configured if you have any trouble. Cool. Well, we are at time. Thanks everyone for coming. Appreciate all the questions. And oh yeah, thanks. And our support emails there in the chat. All right. See you next time.